Who was better, Paul McCartney or John Lennon? The age-old question about the Beatles. Well, Paul McCartney has got a new song out today, 64 years after the first Beatles songs were released. He's still creating new music. So I thought I'd just let you know my thoughts on the McCartney versus Lennon debate. Hello, connoisseurs of curiosity. Thank you for joining me on this walk and chat today. It's a bit rainy. So, Paul McCartney's new single is a ballad. It's obviously slow, and it's a guitar, a piano, and his voice. And his voice is beginning to age. So there is a wistful poignancy, I would say, to the overall vibe of the song. It feels a little bit like Johnny Cash when he did Hurt. It's got that kind of, not sorrowful, but in that ballpark, if you know what I mean, kind of atmosphere to it. So, I mean, I really liked it, I have to say. I am a Beatles fan. I'm not a Beatles nutcase, but I am a big fan of their music. My favourite album is Abbey Road, but I love all of their songs, all of their albums, the early stuff, the old stuff. I love John's, George's, Paul's songs. So I don't really have a favourite, but this song has an immediacy to it. And I feel it sits in that same area of Paul McCartney songs where he can just drop a song and it feels like it's been around forever. It feels like you know the years and decades and centuries that are in that music. He has this uncanny knack of being able to do that. If you listen to Yesterday, or Blackbird, or Penny Lane, there is so much nostalgia, and it feels like they've been around forever. Why is that? How can he do that with just melody and a few notes? So there's an incredible documentary that Channel 4 did, I think in the 90s, with Howard Goodall. And he was looking at the music of the Beatles and many other 20th century greats. And if you go on YouTube and just put Howard Goodall, Goodall, the Beatles, Howard Goodall, the Beatles, you'll find that documentary. It's about 50 minutes long. It is excellent. He really breaks down in such an interesting way so many different songs. But when he's talking about the Paul McCartney songs, he says how they incorporate elements of music that are from centuries before, such as some of the cadences, the differences between notes or chords come from the 13th or the 14th century. Hymns from church. You know, in a Christian hymn, how it ends with Amen. That's called a plagal cadence. I learnt that from Howard Goodall. And those kind of cadences are in the song Yesterday and various other Paul McCartney tunes. So he has this knack of introducing elements of music that are almost long forgotten. And another thing that Howard Goodall says is that in Yesterday, the scale, the notes that McCartney chooses are from the Dorian mode. Mode are a series of notes that were around before major and minor scales. That's how old they are. And he gives the example of Scarborough Fair. Are you going to Scarborough Fair? Parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme. So I put that kind of oldie English accent on it for you, for your delight there, because this takes us back a few centuries, right? And you do not hear those types of intervals happening in modern music. But Paul McCartney used them in Yesterday. And Blackbird, you can see on YouTube, Paul McCartney, I think he was on the Michael Parkinson chat show again in the 90s, saying that how he stole the idea for Blackbird from Johann Sebastian Bach. There's a song, a tune, it's Adagio, I think it's in G minor. I used to play it on the classical guitar myself. Jimmy Page played this at the beginning of a song in the Led Zeppelin concerts as well. So it's a very famous Johann Sebastian Bach piece, and McCartney based Blackbird off that kind of riff. So yeah, McCartney is still doing it 64 years later. People have retired earlier than that, and he was in his 20s when we're talking about the first Beatles songs. It is unbelievable that he's still doing it. So, McCartney versus Lennon. The melodies that McCartney uses, as I've said, they are just embedding centuries-old music. And, oh my God, I didn't even mention Hey Jude. Naaa, 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 Naaa. When you are in a concert and that's kicking off, go and look at the Live Aid version of that. It's religious. It's a whole stadium singing in unison. Incredible, absolutely incredible melody. If we look at John Lennon's melodies, I Am the Walrus, one of my favourite Beatles songs. I am he as you are, me as you are, he and we are. As Howard Goodall says, it's like a police siren. That's why Liam Gallagher could sing it when Oasis covered I Am the Walrus. I'm going to get a lot of hateful comments from Oasis fans if they ever see this. Yeah, so even one of the more melodic John Lennon songs, If I Fell in love with her, da, 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 da. The John Lennon vocal in that is, again, it's in a narrow parameter of notes, whereas the Paul McCartney duo vocal or backing vocal is incredibly melodic, and it's very, very difficult to sing that. And actually, if you listen to it, If I Fell, it's so difficult that even Paul McCartney, one of the greatest harmonizers of all time, at about 1:45, I think, in the song, even Paul McCartney's voice cracks and he can't finish the note. But they kept that take, because in those days they used to do like a whole take rather than like these days just dropping in for half a second to fill a note in with Pro Tools. So they just loved that take, so they kept that mistake, that vocal mistake, in there. But yeah, so John Lennon, even though he's got great songs, the melodies are not as exuberant, let's say, as Paul McCartney's. So I think we can say that Paul McCartney is a better songwriter than John Lennon. But shocking news, was George Harrison really the best songwriter? Now that's for another video, but if you go onto Spotify and go to the Beatles, I think that Here Comes the Sun is the most popular Beatles song by Spotify listens. So, what does that say? Or was Ringo the real genius? Ringo has had a revision. I remember when I was a kid, people used to make jokes about Ringo and that he's a crap drummer. But he's an absolute genius, and he's very unusual in his drumming style because he's left-handed. You can see on YouTube Ringo speaking about his drum fills, and he's on an Irish television show and he's got a kit there, drum kit, and he's showing that he's left-handed, so he can't actually do the drum fills technically correctly. So he was kind of chasing around the drum kit with his wrong hand as such. And that's why his fills are unusual. And there's a great video on YouTube. It's called something like The World's Best Drummers Speak About Ringo. And you've got everybody on there. You've got Dave Grohl, you've got the amazing Taylor Hawkins, the unbelievable Stuart Copeland from The Police, Max Weinberg, Springsteen's drummer, every drummer from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, from Green Day, Paul McCartney's own drummer now. They're all speaking about how they bow down to Ringo and his incredible creativity. There's also, if you want to get really technical, there's a video on the channel, the YouTube channel Drumeo, Drumeo, speaking about Ringo's fills. That's brilliant as well. It's very technical. But yeah, there's a revision of Ringo's contribution. And without Ringo, I don't know, if the Beatles had had John Bonham, would they have been the band that they were? Hard to say. Ringo gave them a difference. So was Ringo the genius? Or was McCartney the genius? Or Lennon? Or Harrison? Perhaps they all were. That's what makes them the greatest band ever. I will not hear a word against it. Till next time, keep up the curiosity.